I think it starts at home. So the parents that are reading with the kids, obviously for 20 minutes a night, those kids are going to make a lot more progress than the parents that are plopping them in front of an iPad or letting them watch TV in their room. And it's the parents that, and reading can come in many forms. It can come reading an online article, it can come from just environmental print, just walking around Wegmans and having kids read a cereal box. And parents don't always do that. It's more the parents that are spending time and doing it. And actually, when they come to kindergarten and not reading at all, they're behind the eight ball. So they take years sometimes to catch up.
The main thing I'd like to see is every family member, especially mothers and fathers, reading to newborns, getting them hooked on reading, especially those critical years 1 through 3, or 0 to 3. Some people do it even in utero, reading to the baby, while just so you can recognize language patterns. That's key.
Well, it always starts in the home, right? Both of my parents, who were the children of Italian immigrants, put themselves through higher education. My father on the GI Bill, he was a Korean War veteran, although stationed in West Berlin, what was then West Berlin. My mother was a high school history teacher, who, as she likes to point out, was pregnant with me when she received her master's degree and began her teaching career. So that's to say that I grew up in a home some decades ago when books were still the primary medium through which people interacted with the world.
I like to play video games, specifically VR video games. I like reading sci-fi, horror, H.P. Lovecraft especially. I like reading because I feel like it just takes you to different worlds that are sometimes way better and sometimes more hectic than our own.
Well, nowadays it's more like it's all about student engagement. So it's about, more hands-on as much as we can be in English. Although a lot of our hands-on is basically reading and writing. The STEM classes nowadays are really excelling because students love project-based learning and let's build a trebuchet or something like that. But, so more student engagement. We finished The Glass Menagerie, the play by Tennessee Williams. And one student did this, just this artwork, creative artwork, and I'll share this with all future students. Another student did a scrapbook based on The Glass Menagerie. So things like that, when students do that on their own, it's so rewarding as a teacher.
While I do think for some students that's necessary, for students that enjoy books, being forced to read them kind of makes us dislike the books, because when I get told I need to read a book and I try and it's force-fed to me, I feel I kind of get disassociated with it and I don't really connect with the book.
You remember when you were back in school and you dread getting a book this thick. Most kids hate reading that, so why would you give kids that hate reading a book that they don't want to read? And I think reading in general, you need to find like almost a coaching mentality, like you can do it, instead of, the old school reading teachers who would just, sit around and not be animated. I think you gotta want to be there.
Early teaching years was a disaster. Not a disaster, but I feel like I should write all those early students a letter of apology because I was just figuring it out, for myself. But those were the years I worked the hardest. I'm really proud of those years because I kind of inherited some files from teachers who had retired. But really, you got to, make it work for you. You have to build up your own stuff, whatever works for you, your lessons, your activities. You can borrow some, but some work, some kind of don't work. You modify it. So, but just putting in long hours and a lot of hard work. I'm really proud of it.
I rarely present from script, whereas I think perhaps as a novice teacher, I was much more confident about delivering a series of arguments that I wanted to make about a book. And I could probably do that without even looking up. Whereas I think it's really important because I'm not assuming that the students in the class will be as engaged with the concept of literature to see it as something lively and active. I've also realized that you cannot assume that in a 15-week semester that students will read 10 or 12 books, which is where I started. And now I'd like to say I'm down to in some classes maybe 6.
If I can be direct, we have a man in the White House now who says he doesn't read. He said that. We live in a culture that's very anti-intellectual. And I don't know, I keep going back to a book I used to teach, but now they bumped it down to, I think, 9th grade, Fahrenheit 451. Okay, and it's all about, you don't need the government to ban books if people aren't reading them anyway. Reading, and I hate to say it, is becoming a lost art. And it scares the heck out of me. And basically, screen technology is taking over the world. Unless I think fewer people are reading, and sometimes students, I kind of feel sorry for today's students because that screen technology might be destroying the attention span it takes, not just to read, but to read endurance reading, like long novels. How many lives have been changed by one book, one sentence? It kind of inspires me.
I do specifically recall my father taking me to the Bloomfield, New Jersey Public Library when I was a child. But, probably by the age of 6 or 7, with a library card, and we would literally take out books. I quickly began reading book-length works to myself, probably by the time I was in 1st or 2nd grade. And it became a sort of lifelong comfort. And so I've always felt at ease with myself with a book.
Thank God for Harry Potter, getting little kids hooked on reading. That's an amazing thing. And then slowly, though, as these kids age, you see it constantly. They sometimes get away from reading, and it seems like video games totally take over. I would just want, reading is super important. And it all starts at home. Parents have to be, how shall I say it, literacy role models.
We always preach school comes first, so if he doesn't do his homework, he's not going to hockey practice. So most parents aren't like that, unfortunately, but he just likes to read in general, and he's intrinsically motivated. A lot of kids aren't, but it's all about balance. You don't want to put all your eggs in one basket, but I mean, to do your homework at home or just to read with your kids is critical.
Every time I do like a crossword puzzle, when you fill in all the blanks, you throw it away. There's no point in doing it a second time. But in fact, with literature, it's as if the crossword puzzle could be rearranged each time with a different set of meanings. And that's why literature, is sort of an infinite pleasure. It's always rewarding.
I'm pretty much old-fashioned, hard copy of anything. But if anything gets people reading, I'm all right with it. If it's the Buffalo News being read on an electronic device, great. But read, just read.